is 12 o'clock. Here is the midday news. First, the top stories. Police kill 14 suspected cultists, arrest 139 others in 10 months in Ogun State. Oshibajo cautions against politicizing killings in Benue, Kaduna and Taraba. Presidency says new wage review committee has begun work. Kogi sacks 8 PEM secretaries and 1,774 civil servants to reposition the state. In foreign, Arab states seek UN recognition of Jerusalem as Palestinian capital. South Africa Parliament to review process for impeaching president. Good afternoon. I am Chienye Egwuonwu, bringing you the news in details shortly. 10 suspected cultists were killed in Ogun State during police raid and encounter with the police between January and October last year. 139 suspected cultists were also arrested by the police from 52 cases of kidnap recorded across the state during the period under review. The figure is contained in the statistics obtained by Rock City FM from the State Police Command Headquarters, Elewero, Abeokuta, the state capital. The police command says it has put measures in place to cope with the rising cases of cultism in the state, especially the involvement of public primary and secondary school students in cultism. During the last State Education Summit, Governor Ibikunle Amosu expressed concern over the activities of cultist groups in the state's public schools, especially the primary schools. The command spokesman, Abimbola Oyeyemi, in an interview with Rock City FM, says they are aware of the development and are addressing it through the sensitization of all stakeholders in the education sector. The command says its amnesty program for cult members who are ready to denounce cultism is still open. That was the Ogun State Police spokesman, Abimbola Oyeyemi, speaking on the menace of cultist groups in the state. Meanwhile, teachers in Ogun State's public primary and secondary schools have expressed concern over the rise in the number of cult groups in the schools. The state chairman of the Academic Staff Union of Secondary Schools, ASUS, Akim Lasisi, and his counterparts in the Nigerian Union of Teachers, Tolu Adebanjo, describes the development in the public schools as worrisome. The names of cult groups in the schools include Killer Boys, School 2 Guys, Jargon, Dangerous Boys, Silent Killers, Executors, and Kill the Teachers. Most of the students in the public secondary schools, according to ASUS and NUT chairman, are now very active in cultist activities, some of them ready to attack any teacher who crosses their path. Lasisi explained that the cultist groups in the state's public schools are now springing out with different names and arming themselves with weapons to carry out attacks. The NUT chairman, Tolu Adebanjo, says the trend has reduced the level of discipline in the public schools, as some of the teachers are now afraid of penalizing erring students. Police have shot dead an armed robbery suspect at the Ososa Junction along the Shagam-Ore-Benin Expressway. Spokesman of the State Police Command, Abimbola Oyeyemi, says the intervention by the police follows a distress call to the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad that armed robbers have blocked the expressway, dispossessing motorists and passengers of their belongings. On sighting the police patrol, Oyeyemi says the robbers engaged them in a gun battle which lasted for over 45 minutes, during which one of the robbers was killed, while others escaped with gunshot wounds. The police image maker lists weapons recovered from the bandits as including 2 locally made single-barrel guns and 78 live cartridges. State Police Commissioner Ahmed Iliazu, while commending his officers, asked the public to report anyone with gunshot wounds in their areas to the nearest police station. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has cautioned Nigerians against the tendency to politicize the recent killings nationwide, including the herdsmen attack in Taraba, Benue and Kaduna states. Osinbajo, speaking at an interdenominational service to mark the 2018 Armed Forces Remembrance Day at the National Crescent Center, Abuja, warns that politicization of the killings could plunge the country into a fresh crisis. The vice president notes that some of the people are seeking to benefit politically from the crisis by accusing the opposition of masterminding it, while others are stoking the embers of ethnicity and religious sentiments out of the crisis. The Boko Haram insurgency, he recalls, thrives because it was initially politicized, adding that Nigerians have a duty to stop them from playing dangerous politics that will threaten the peace and unity of the country. Kogi state government has compulsorily retired 8 permanent secretaries and unspecified number of directors in the state civil service. Also, 1,774 civil servants were dismissed from the service. The state head of civil service, Mrs. Deborah Ugmole, says the measure is part of the ongoing reform to reposition the civil service. Out of the sacked 1,774 civil servants, 1,667 were indicted of gaining employment with fake credentials, while the remaining 107 sacked civil servants were indicted for alleged fraud. The state's Director General of Media and Publicity, Kingsley Fangwo, says the 1,667 workers who forged their credentials are collecting salaries and allowances totaling 133.3 million naira monthly or over 1.3 billion naira yearly. Describing them as enemies of the state, Fangwo explained that the salaries being collected by the 1,667 workers could be used to provide adequate drugs in the state's primary health care centers. The presidency has assured workers nationwide that a new national minimum wage will be ready this year. Labour and Employment Minister Senator Chris Ngige says the tripartite committee set up to negotiate the new wage has begun work. Ngige, addressing newsmen at Ifiteduru in Dano Ofia local government area of Anambra State, explains that the committee held its inaugural meeting last December 14. The committee, according to him, set up a framework for the negotiation of the new wage during the inaugural meeting. He says that President Muhammadu Buhari has mandated the committee to produce a new national minimum wage that will be acceptable to all the major stakeholders in the economy. Security forces have killed a kidnapped kingpin, Prince Igwe, who allegedly masterminded the massacre of more than 20 worshippers returning from crossover night in Omoku River State on New Year Day. He was shot dead by a combined team of soldiers, police and operatives of the Department of State Security Service, along with his 2 lieutenants on Saturday night at Imo River State's border. The bodies were displayed publicly at the Army Division 6 headquarters in Port Harcourt on Sunday. The Army Division's outgoing commander, Major General Enobong Udo, told newsmen that the kidnapped kingpin, who was a former militant leader, relocated from Rivers State to Enugu Metropolis immediately after the New Year killing in Rivers State. While in Enugu, the Army General says the kidnapped kingpin was planning a fresh attack on Omoku, during which churches, schools, security formations will be targeted. You're still listening to the Midday News on Rock City 101.9 FM. Up next, we bring you foreign, business and sports news. Please do stay with us. Now in foreign, Arab state says it will soon embark on a diplomatic drive to persuade the United Nations to recognize a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital on territory captured by Israel in the 1967 war. 6 Arab foreign ministers met in Amman on Saturday to follow up on earlier decisions taken by the Arab League to counter US President Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. A committee made up of Egypt, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the Palestinians, and headed by Jordan, was set up after an emergency meeting of the Arab League in Cairo, calling on the US to abandon its decision. Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi said the ministers would recommend a series of moves to a full ministerial meeting of the Arab League due later this month. The League, according to him, will confront the decision by seeking a UN resolution to recognize a Palestinian state on 1967 borders with Jerusalem as its capital. South Africa's parliament plans to review its rules relating to removing the country's president after the Constitutional Court ruled that lawmakers failed to hold President Jacob Zuma to account. The court ruling has piled pressure on Zuma and his allies as his opponents within the ruling African National Congress are pulling for his removal as head of state before his term ends in 2019. A parliamentary subcommittee will meet this week to discuss a draft procedure on the section of the Constitution relating to the removal of a president, and the draft will then be debated in the House. The National Assembly Subcommittee will review a draft procedure drawn up in April 2016 that was never finalized at a 2015 study of impeachment proceedings of 7 other parliaments around the world, the statement said. Zuma, 75, has suffered several no-confidence votes in parliament over the recent years, mostly relating to a string of corruption allegations. He denies any wrongdoing. Next in the Midday news is the business news. Nigerian communication satellites is to procure from China 2 satellites to capture the local and African markets. Communication Minister Adebayo Shitu broke the news to State House correspondents after meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari at the Presidential Villa Abuja. According to him, the China Exim Bank is to pay the nation's counterpart funding for the satellites. The construction of the satellites will take 2 years. It will begin immediately the papers are signed by both parties. Finally, in the midday news, sports news. Super Eagles B team will depart Nigeria today to Morocco ahead of the 2018 African Nations Championship. The team contingent, which consists of 23 players, coaches and backroom staff, will travel from Abuja. The 2014 bronze winners will open the championship on January 15th against Rwanda in Tangier. Super Eagles media officer Toyin Ibitoye says Monday's departure is to enable the team acclimatize for 7 days to the weather in Morocco before the tournament. Nigeria will take on former Cup champions Libya in the second group game on January 19th. The NPFL Stars will round up their group games against Equatorial Guinea on January 23rd in Agadir. That was the midday news, and just before we go, the major stories once again. Police killed 14 suspected cultists, arrested 139 others in 10 months in Ogun State. Oshibajo cautioned against politicizing killings in Benue, Kaduna and Taraba. Presidency said the new wage review committee has begun work. Kogi sacked 8 permanent secretaries and 1,774 civil servants to reposition the state. While in foreign, we also reported that Arab states sought UN recognition of Jerusalem as Palestinian capital. And finally, that South African Parliament to review process for impeaching president. For more stories and to listen to us live, please log on to our website www.rockcityfmradio.com/live. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Chienye. Good afternoon, and do have a beautiful day ahead.